Hello, and welcome to the Art of Selling Online Courses. We are here to share winning strategies and secret hacks from top performers in the online course industry. My name is Monica Badiou. I am the copy chief for data driven marketing, and today I am talking to a fellow conversion copywriter, Abi Prendergast. Now, I'm super excited because she's an Evergreen funnel strategist and conversion copywriter, and she's helped some of the biggest names in the course industry. She's the creator of Day One Evergreen and author of the book of the same name. Her signature funnel contains an automated feedback loop for simple customer focused optimization, resulting in better conversions every month. She's helped one client launch a new $797 course through a webinar funnel to a list of 10,000 people and made $600,000. So today we're going to talk about some pro hacks to improve your webinar funnel so it converts better without alienating or fear-mongering your audience. And before we dig into today's super exciting interview, I wanted to remind you of how much your support means to us. We're here to make your podcast experience even better, and you can help us with just a quick favor. By taking a moment to rate and review our podcast, you're giving us priceless feedback that helps shape future episodes. So, has this show helped you make money? Has it helped you grow your business or improve your courses? If it has, please share it in the reviews. So go to ratethispodcast.com/online courses. And nothing would make me happier today than to hear how this show has helped you. Okay, let's go to the show. Abi, welcome. I'm so happy you're here and I'm so excited for what's about to come.
Hi, Monica. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Ooh, I'm super excited. It's going to be an awesome podcast episode. So let's get the ball running. What are the biggest mistakes you've seen course creators make when it comes to using webinars as a sales strategy?
Okay, great question. So I think the number one mistake I see is not having a limited time offer. So even when it's evergreen, you need to make an offer to your audience. You need to give them a reason to act now versus 6 months from now. And that doesn't have to be like a fake countdown timer, the ones where if you refresh, you come back, it magically restarts. I'm not talking about fake urgency, but you do need to create a limited time offer where you're giving them a set window to take you up on the best deal. And equally, interestingly, so I wasn't going to go here, but I'm going to go here. You don't want to do too much urgency. So I think one of the other mistakes people make is they do like a webinar and it's limited time offer, but then there's fast action discounts. You have 24 hours to get this, and then you have early bird bonuses, and there's just so much urgency. It gets a bit intense. And I had a client that was doing this. We removed all that, and we just had a limited time offer where it was just like, okay, this is the course, you've got 7 days to decide, here's the deal, and conversion rates actually increased by removing some of the urgency. So yeah, it's my roundabout way of saying not having limited time offer or having too much urgency that it's actually a bit intense for your audience.
So when you say a limited time offer that isn't like super based on urgency, can you give me an example of what that actually looks like?
Yeah, I mean, so there does need to be some urgency. Like, unfortunately, urgency is just a very powerful motivator. I mean, in our everyday lives, it motivates us. If you've got 2 minutes to catch your train, you're gonna walk a lot faster than if you've got an hour. So you do need some urgency, but it's just giving your audience a reasonable amount of time to decide. Like if you've got an evergreen webinar and it's a $2,000 course you're selling, I think giving them 30 minutes to decide on the webinar or they lose the best deal. I mean, I take longer to make decisions like that. You're not giving them enough time to actually weigh it up. So giving them a good 7-day window to read your emails, read through the offer, make a decision. And then when the doors close, when the offer ends, they lose that deal, and that has to be genuine. So it really truly is a limited one time offer, and there are tools that can allow you to do that, like Deadline Funnel, for example. So when they sign up for your webinar, it triggers that offer, and then when it expires, it redirects them to the sales page at the full price or without your bonus stack, whatever limited offer you're doing. And then if they do re-sign up for your webinar, they don't get it again. Like, it's truly one time, and you're being honest about that, upfront about that, and yeah, giving them the chance to grab that deal.
I'm so happy you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people, they focus on, okay, how do I get this webinar to convert while people are watching the webinar? And they don't really put that much focus on what happens after the webinar, like the follow-up emails. And that makes so much sense, right? Because usually webinars are used for higher ticket offers, and it makes perfect sense. Like 30 minutes to decide on something pricey isn't enough. I think what we've seen our clients do, and what we recommend them, is to like try to have like at least 3 to 7 days of following up with the audience. And we recommend like segmenting based on where they have left in the webinar and what they have seen in the webinar, and then adapt that email strategy to bring them back into the webinar or to consider the offer. I really like that. Nice.
Yeah, I think the follow up is super important. I mean, it takes me longer than 30 minutes to decide what I'm having for dinner. So it takes more than half an hour to decide if I'm going to invest in a course.
Smart. Okay, so when you look at the client's webinar funnel, what do you go after? Like the first thing you're going to optimize? What's the lowest hanging fruit?
Okay, so the lowest hanging fruit for specifically the webinar, are we talking about? Or the
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the two metrics I would be looking at would be conversion rates, and also how much time people are spending on the webinar. So if people are dropping off in the first 10 minutes, what I would do is make sure that I've got a super juicy, actionable tip that they're going to get in the first 10 minutes. And I would promote that on the opt-in page for that. So say, like, in the first 10 minutes, you'll learn how to do X, something that they really want, because if you can get them to stick around for the first 10 minutes, they're more likely to stick around for longer. And then the pitch is, even though we want to give people time to decide, that if you do a super value packed webinar, you're going to have their attention. They're going to want to reciprocate by giving you their attention when you pitch the offer. So actually making sure that you're not rushing through the pitch, and you're looking at every feature of your course, and you're mapping it onto what's actually going on in your audience's life. So rather than just saying, like, oh, here's 30 Instagram templates, actually saying, okay, so you're waking up every day to post on Instagram, it's stressful, it's eating into your client time or whatever. So this is how it's going to help you. So it's very clear, the dots are connected for your audience, how your course fits into their life, how it's going to benefit them, and actually, make their life easier, better, richer, whatever that outcome is that you're promising.
So, do you have a specific go-to structure for these webinars? Because I know a lot of people are doing like the Russell Brunson teach and pitch type of webinar, and then you have a longer version, the type of like 3 secrets, and then it takes 1 hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. So is there like a sweet spot, or is there any way to kind of say, okay, at this stage of the promotion or for this specific segment, we're going to use teach and pitch and maybe a lower end offer. And for this bigger audience or this specific, I don't know, maybe a new launch or something like that, we're going to go with the longer structure.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the sweet spot has been 40 minutes to an hour for my clients, and that will be three lessons. But rather than just doing how to's, the focus really being on facilitating mindset shifts. So mapping out the path from where they are, where they want to be, and then kind of putting these belief packets into the webinar. So it's like, okay, what do they not believe now about themselves, about me, about the industry, that's stopping them from achieving the goal they want? And then what do they need to believe? Popping that in the webinar. So by the end, they're kind of, I guess, a fundamentally different person to they are when they enter the webinar, and they're leaving. Not only have they got value, but they now believe all the things to be true that make them a perfect fit customer, versus before where they might be skeptical that the promise that you're making can even work for them.
Nice. So, what's the process for choosing the topic of the webinar? You mentioned you have this shifting belief, and you have to know what kind of beliefs they have that are preventing them from making the step towards buying your course and achieving the final outcome. So, how do you get to that information?
So customer research. Some of my favorite methods are customer interviews. Obviously, actually, if you're speaking to your customers on a Zoom call and really getting to know what they want, what's holding them back, and then also Facebook group mining. I'm a big fan of, so going into like the forums, the groups where they complain about the problems they're having. They go in moments of frustration and say what's driving them up the wall, and then using that to craft the webinar. And then what I'll tend to do is I will draft quite a few titles, and I'll go through and I'll be like, okay, is this compelling? Is this mouth watering? Is this what my audience wants? And then I'll cross them out, and then I'll try and get it to about 4. And then what I like to do is actually to get my list to vote on it. So just email them and say, look, thinking of doing a webinar, these are the 4 titles, click the one that you would be most interested in. And then you can very easily, on whatever email platforms we were using, see which link got the highest clicks. And then there you go, you've got your title.
That's cool. And do you do any, I know, testing of the webinar with a smaller sample, like a small segment of maybe like super high engaged email subscribers, and you just run it and see what happens? Like, do you do that?
No, I kind of try and research validate as much as possible beforehand, so I feel good about putting the webinar out there, and then then seeing how it performs with the live or on demand, and then optimizing based on that quantity feedback, rather than doing kind of adding that extra webinar to the plate, because my course creators like kind of where they're at is they've had enough of live launching, really.
Cool. Well, that begs the question, evergreen or live, which is better?
Oh, I mean, both. Hybrid, I think. I mean, like, I can't deny that there are course creators getting amazing results with live launching. Personally, I think it's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. So if you're a course creator and you're launching once a year and you want to make your annual income in that one launch, I mean, that's very stressful. And I think what I'm seeing is course creators will do that. Sometimes they hit their goals, but they're going to be really burnt out after from getting that live launch together, or maybe they don't hit their goals and then they actually have to wait another 6 months, a year to optimize and to try again, by which time all the feedback they collected might no longer be relevant or valuable, because the world, as we know, is constantly changing. So that's why I love Evergreen, because it's not just about the passive income, obviously, although we all like that idea of like waking up to money, but actually having the opportunity to basically be testing your webinar every single day, and testing your emails and testing your funnel, and then you've got this up-to-date fresh feedback and data that you can use to optimize your funnel, so you can continue to get better conversions and make sales every day.
You mentioned like the holy grail of marketing, split testing and optimizing. So, what are specific benchmarks you're following? Like, how do you know which part are you going to optimize? Is it maybe how many people register to the webinar on a daily basis, weekly basis? How many people do actually show up? Like, how do
Mm-hmm.
you decide which bottleneck you're going to focus on first?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, the key metrics to look at are cost per lead if you're running ads, and then the opt-in rates for the webinar. Then, yeah, watch rate, sales page conversion rate, and then your email open rates and click throughs. So, in terms of what to optimize, I mean, I have an idea of what the industry benchmarks are, but I think it's, what's most helpful is the control. So rather than optimizing because so and so gets 60% opt-in rates, it's like, okay, what did we get last month and how can we beat that? So for the first couple of months, I will look at if there's something that's obviously low, like if we're only getting like 23% opt-in rates, then I would start there. But then from that point, I would go by the control rather than a benchmark.
Well, that reduces some of the pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I think people compare. They feel really bad because they're not making all these sales, like Amy Porterfield or Pat Flynn or whoever. And it's like, well, these people have been doing it for years. They built this big audience. They have entire marketing teams supporting them. So yeah, just focus on being better than your last month.
That actually makes me wonder about this, and I've seen this with lots of course creators. So you say, okay, lots of people like Amy Porterfield, Marie Forleo, and all these people have huge social reputation, visibility, social proof, everything you want. So
Mm-hmm.
I assume when they do run a webinar and they do sell, whether it's evergreen or live, the friction and the resistance of the viewer is a lot less than someone new coming through them to like with a paid ad or something like that, and they see them on Facebook or on Instagram, they click. It's the first time maybe they're actually interacting with that creator. Do you have any word of advice for someone who's thinking about doing this and they don't have the huge visibility of someone like Amy Porterfield?
Yeah. Okay. So I think in that situation, because I think the common advice I hear is like, you've got to live launch, you've got to live launch X amount of times before you go on demand. But actually, I'm going to be a bit controversial here. And I think when you're a newer course creator, it's actually really handy to go on demand because when Amy Porterfield does a live webinar, like everyone shows up and like all the like course marketing experts show up as well. It's this big event, whereas for most people, like most of the time, I don't, when I've signed up for a live webinar, like I forget, something else comes up, and that's the experience for a lot of the people I speak to as well. So by going live, by having that set date, you're kind of adding actually a bit of friction, whereas if it's on demand and people can watch it straight away, they're actually going to engage with you. And I mean, with the webinars, they're actually seeing you. They're building that you're building that know, like, and trust factor. When people can see your face, yeah, you're no longer just a stranger online, and they can get more of a feel for you, what you're about. So hang on, what was the original question again? I've gone off on a tangent, Monica. I'm so sorry.
So, what can I do as a course creator who doesn't have the visibility and the
Gotcha.
reputation of someone like Amy Porterfield? What can I do in that webinar to reduce friction and to get the viewer to click and eventually enroll in my course?
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so show up on video and be yourself, and then testimonials. You do need social proof. If you don't have loads, do a beta test. Just get that social proof, reduce that friction, and get people into your webinar other ways, like speak on podcasts and write blog posts for other people's audiences, because then it doesn't matter if you don't have that trust yet. You're kind of borrowing the trust that someone else has built. And again, that's why another reason for going evergreen, because someone could listen to your podcast episode from 2 years ago and enroll in your webinar from it and then convert because they liked what you said in the episode, which is actually how I sell most of my own courses.
So, how like should I be upfront about my webinar being evergreen, like in demand, or should I promote it as like, well,
Oh
it's
no.
live?
Yeah, definitely be upfront about on demand. So this is one of my my big pet peeves, as anyone who follows me on LinkedIn will know, is when people pretend that their webinar is live. I just think, what a bad way to start a relationship with someone. Like when someone's joined your world and they're about to get sales emails from you, potentially buy from you, be in your course, learn from you, why start that relationship with a lie? It makes no sense to me. So 100% be upfront, and people appreciate it. I mean, I ran a poll on LinkedIn this week, and I think we maybe 60 responses, and of those, 80% of people said, I prefer to watch webinars on demand. We're in this instant gratification era where we don't wait till the weekend to watch films when they're showing at 9 o'clock. We've got Netflix, we've got Amazon Prime. So I think this is the way that people like to consume. So yeah, there's no need to pretend it's live. You don't need to add that extra kind of urgency, that extra pressure. Just be upfront about it. You're giving them what they want when they want it, and your watch rate should be higher. I think eWebinar did a case study. It was something like 65% shut rates for on demand, 40% for live. So yeah, there's no need to start that relationship with a lie, and I very strongly recommend against it.
This is good because I think there's a lot of false beliefs about what you have to do when
Mm.
you're using a webinar to sell your course. And one of them, it's like this: you have to present it as live, because if it's live, then the people are going to show up for the opportunity to, engage live with you, and you have the chat tactic. So, hey, drop a yes in the chat if you agree to this, and then you see the recorded chat comments.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of creates the idea that, well, I can engage with this.
Yeah, and I think there are other ways to build that engagement into the Evergreen webinar funnel. And I think a big one is just really knowing your audience, like collecting all that voice of customer. So when you're speaking to them on this on demand webinar, they actually feel like you are sat at a bar with them, sat across from them, sharing this, because you're speaking their language, you're referencing the shows that they watch, you're talking about exactly like what's going on in their life, and they feel like it's this one-to-one conversation. They forget that it's on demand, well, to an extent, and then building opportunities for them to engage actually in your Evergreen webinar funnel. I think especially like before you get to $10,000 a month in course sales, having, instead of just, the generic FAQ email, actually having a Q&A session where you say, look, I'm around to answer your questions, hit me up with them. I'm giving your audience the opportunity to engage with you. So yeah, they're still getting that chance, they're still getting access to you. It's just, you don't have to constantly burn yourself out by going live.
So, when would someone see that evergreen webinar? It's like I'm a new lead and I go to your website,
Mm-hmm.
or I see that ad and I click and I see it. That's for new leads. How about people who are on the list for some time and they haven't bought that specific course? Do you have a recommended, time frame?
Yeah, this is a good question. So I would say give it at least 6 months before you reinvite them to the webinar funnel. My reason being, I mean, I'm signed up to, there's a specific course creator that does evergreen webinars, and I just get the exact same emails like from her every 3 months, and I'm like, not this again. So I would just say like every 6 months reinvite them, and just switch up your subject line, switch up the gifts in your emails, optimize it, like do a seasonal update. If you launched, but it started promoting your Evergreen webinar in January, and you've got language like, snuggle up with a cup of cocoa and watch this webinar. Switch that out in summer. So you're saying, grab an iced cold kombucha or whatever people are drinking in summer, because then it's showing your audience as well that it's up to date. Because even though Evergreen is awesome, you don't want it to feel stale. So you want them to know it's on demand, it's Evergreen, but you don't want them to feel like, okay, this is content from 2 years ago, therefore the course is going to be from 2 years ago. And especially if it's a marketing course, if it's for entrepreneurs, then that's critical, because no one wants to know Instagram tactics from like 2022. So yes, to Loop back around your question. Gosh, I am going off on tangents today. Yeah, every 6 months, re-invite them in and just do a refresh of your funnel. Doesn't need to be a lengthy one. Just, spend an afternoon just going in, tweaking those, making those seasonal changes. And then also re-engage your audience within those 6 months. So one thing I talk about in my book is having a 9-word email where every 30 days you basically just use the 9-word email. I can't remember who coined the tactic, but it's pretty popular. But just saying, like, are you still interested in X, or are you still struggling with this? Just to get that conversation going, because that's an opportunity then to potentially just like have a candid conversation and get them back, giving them the opportunity again to go into your course.
Yeah, I've tested that 9-word email. What we do is usually a longer series of re-engagement emails. So we have like
Mm-hmm.
4. For some of our clients, we do it twice a year, like a full re-engagement campaign.
Mm.
We definitely do one like 1 month or 2 months before Black Friday, because that's like the biggest time of the year
Mm.
to, well, you want to make sure that you actually land in the inbox rather than the spam. And we have those 4 emails and then nurture sequence that goes to the people who re-engaged from those emails. So another 4 emails, and then delay until they actually see some sales sequence or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
like every 6 months, how do you feel about using webinars in like at the end of a welcome sequence?
I feel great about it. I mean, I think if you've got a course for less than 1,500, just run your ads, run leads straight to the webinar, and your welcome sequence is then a sales sequence. I mean, you would have seen this, like the open rates for your welcome sequence are going to be higher than anything else you'll see at any other point, because people are new to your world, they're curious, you've just given them something, it's a seducible moment, so take advantage of that and sell. um, not everyone needs a big warm up, especially if it is like a $500 course. And if you do have other lead magnets and bringing people into your world, just get people into your webinar sequence, invite them. Don't delay giving them the opportunity to buy from you.
Interesting. Um, have you noticed any affinity by industry? Like, is there a specific kind of niche in the online course industry that prefers to consume webinars and then buy through those webinars?
No, I haven't. I know that entrepreneurs watch webinars because I'm surrounded by them, and we all do. But I mean, I think once you get to a certain level, people are a little bit more protective of their time, perhaps. So it has to be a good webinar. But I've been reading that I can't remember the exact stat. I don't want to get it wrong. I think it was like 35% or something like that of people would actually rather watch a webinar about a hobby, which really surprised me, because I tend to work with course creators that teach people how to make money, because it makes sense, right? You're investing in a course, you're going to see ROI from it. But actually, yeah, people are enrolling in all sorts, people signing up for all kinds of webinars.
Do you have any data or like maybe a case study from one of these webinar projects you've been working on? Because I'm really curious to kind of hear about, size of an email list, like how big should my email list be, or if I'm investing in ads, what should I expect in terms of how many people land on that page and then how many people register? Because I think there are so many misconceptions about when I am ready to use a webinar as a sales strategy. Like, do I have to have, I don't know, 1 million people on YouTube? Do I have to invest this amount of money and have leads coming from ads? What's the deal there?
Yeah, no, it's never too early to have a webinar. I mean, it's the second best thing after actually having a one-to-one conversation with someone, like actually letting people see you and get that feel for you. So case studies, I mean, so the client you mentioned at the beginning, so it was a brand new product, and we launched at $800. We had a $600,000 launch when they had less than 10,000 people on their email list. So that was awesome. That was with a webinar. And then I straight away took it evergreen. So we launched literally once, took it evergreen, and they make $50,000 to $70,000 a month now. We put the price up to $1,200. They are running ads because traffic needs to come from somewhere. But at one point, it was $27 per $1,400 purchase. And we were getting a crazy like ROAS. And then my webinar, I didn't live launch it. I just was like, okay, I'm just going to try it on demand. And I was seeing 6% conversion rates like from pretty early on. And this is the first time like putting that course out there. And I experimented with running ads, broke even the first month and paused them for a bit. And now I'm looking at how to bring down my cost per lead. So I know if I can just bring it down by 50% or 25%, then everything I make on top of that is going to be profit. Plus I'm growing my email list.
Yeah, that's a very good strategy to grow an email list and like be profitable from an ad funnel.
Yeah.
So we talked about results. What are some of the tactics you use to, move people from, hey, I'm teaching you something or I'm sharing something insightful about what you're currently struggling with, to transitioning into, well, here's the next step and here's the offer. And a lot of people, they use FOMO and fear mongering to move that person from like just watching to engaging. So I'm curious to hear about some of your tactics, because lots of course creators, they're very uncomfortable whenever it comes to pitching their audience. And you're working primarily with people who are teaching people how to make money, so they are a lot more comfortable with that. But with the course creators we've worked, like language course creators, dog training, personal development, the audiences are very sensitive to a sales speech. So I'm curious to hear what are some of the tactics you're using.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I feel like tactics is almost the wrong word, because when I hear tactics, I think like salesy. So yeah, I think rather than FOMO, it's the joy of taking that action. And they're not buying something that you're kind of pushing them into buying. It's more you're communicating the value of what you've got, and you're saying like, hey, look, you struggle with this, or you want this. You told me that when you signed up for your webinar, and because of that, I created this for people like you, and look at all these people that are doing that and getting great results. And this is the love and the care that I put into this program to make sure that you actually are going to finish it and you are going to get the results. So yeah, not really a tactic, just respecting the fact that you poured your heart and soul into creating this course, and letting people know that, communicating that to them, like not doing it an injustice by just glossing over it, and just remembering, yeah, you created this to help people, and you can't help them if they don't know how awesome it is and how it's going to help them.
So instead of blasting urgency like on every slide and the last, I don't know, 30 minutes of a webinar saying, act now or miss out on thousands of dollars in bonuses and your massive discount. We should focus more on like, act now because this is what it would mean for your future. Here's how it's going to transform. So a lot more future pacing rather than, well, your present day sucks.
Yeah.
Let's not make it suck anymore and just grab all this stuff, and tomorrow you'll feel better because you have all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like just having a bit of like empathy and I guess respect for your audience, and just being like, look, this is where you are. Like, that's cool. Well done. You've done this, this, and this. And those are the things that actually make you an awesome fit for the program anyway. I think Rai Schwartz uses the term exclusive empowerment, which I love. So exclusively empowering people to take action, because because of the things that they've already done. But then, yeah, just being like, you're still struggling with this. Like, that's okay. It's not a big deal. Like, you're not trying to make them feel rubbish about it. And then just connecting the dots for them, like, here's how it's going to help you. And yeah, here's what life could look like 6 months from now. It doesn't need to be, 6 months from now, your entire business is going to fall apart and be terrible, or you're going to like be a millionaire because you got my program. Just being like, do you want to keep struggling with this? And or like, it's just giving them the choice, the autonomy. And you can only really give people that autonomy if they really understand what you're offering, because people need to understand in order to make a choice.
So this also goes back to that whole idea of you need testimonials, you need that social proof to make sure that, first of all, the outcome you're promising is something that is achievable for your audience, and it's actually achievable with what you're teaching. And I assume there's a lot of using the testimonials throughout the last part of the webinar as well.
Yeah. So every time you make a claim, you want to back it up with some kind of proof. So if you're saying, I can help you land 5 podcast like guest slots or whatever, then have someone who's actually done that. Otherwise, yeah, people are cynical. People are going to assume that the worst rather than the best, I think, these days.
How long would you say the sales pitch should be to not annoy people, even if it's really good, right? Because at some point, you just like after 1 hour of pitching and testimonials and whatever, answering objections, eventually it's gonna get annoying. So is there like a sweet spot for how long that sales pitch should be?
So I am a fan of a longer sales pitch. For an hour webinar, I would say spend 20 minutes teaching. 20 minutes, sorry, pitching. I mean, if you've truly delivered value, which should really be your goal, you shouldn't be gatekeeping, thinking, oh, I don't want to give too much away. Like, blow their socks off, give them value. Then they are going to stick around. They're going to reciprocate that. And I think while you're showing your modules and your bonuses, you can still be coaching them, talking about how this is going to help them, why it's important. So they're still continuing to get that value. And yeah, I just think people worry so much about annoying their audience that they don't give their offer enough time. And I think, going back to your original question, that's also one of the big mistakes that course creators make.
This was an awesome episode, Abby. I'm so happy we're doing this. Is there any last word of advice you'd like to share with creators who are already selling with webinars or thinking about it?
Yeah, I just say, like, you're doing awesome. Just don't forget that. Like, good for you. You've created something, or you've committed to creating something to help people. And that's, I think we can get so caught up in benchmarks and what everyone else is doing. We don't take enough time to actually be like, yeah, no, we did a good thing. And yeah, just again, like, be willing to test and optimize, and rather than thinking of that as this huge, like, optimization, just keep it really simple. And like, just like little fun experiments, like, oh, I wonder which opt-in page will perform better, and then just make sure you're tracking that and taking note of that, because there's no point doing a test if you don't if you don't then do something with it, or then keep track of that. So yeah, 2 things: you're doing great, and second, yeah, be willing to experiment, be curious, have fun with it, and yeah, just keep testing.
Awesome. So if people heard this episode or watched it on YouTube and want some more of your wisdom, where should they go to find you or to, consume some of your content?
Yeah, so I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to like have a little chat. If you drop me a message, let me know what's going on. You can find me on Instagram as well. I'm trying to grow my Instagram at APT content. And then yeah, head to my website. I've got a webinar on how to set up my day one Evergreen funnel so that you can build all the customer feedback into it and improve your conversions. And I've also got a book which you can grab on Amazon, Day One Evergreen by Abi Prendergast. So Any of those places.
This is great. Thank you, Abby, for joining our podcast and for sharing some of your insights. And to the person who has watched this episode or has listened to this interview, if you found it useful and want to get future episodes, then please subscribe wherever you listened.